Welcome to the Circuit de Catalunya, just outside Barcelona, the venue for the second round of 2012 Formula One pre-season testing. 11 of the 12 teams would be here, and only Marussia weren't running their 2012 car. It would prove to be an eventful 4 days, as Rachel Brooks reminds us.
The week began with the launch of the Mercedes W03. Michael Schumacher and Nico Rosberg recorded the fastest times in Jerez in the 2011 car. Now it was time to find out if they could compete in the 2012 version. Much of the speculation leading up to Barcelona had been whether or not Mercedes were holding back because they had an innovation they were trying to hide.
I'm happy about the car, but we're not going to go into details, I'm afraid. It is a very, very competitive business, and we all try and keep any advantage we think we have as quiet as possible. But it's externally, you'll see it looks a fairly conventional car, but it's improved in every area, and last year we were not good enough, and we looked at every aspect of the car to see how we could improve it, and we believe we've done that.
We have worked very hard on the car, definitely achieved quite a few targets that we were looking for, and now we hope it really moves us a step up to where we've been last year.
Ferrari's target in Barcelona was to spend more time on the track than they had in Jerez, but on the first morning they lost an hour.
We are a little bit behind the schedule, but we have plenty of time to catch up. We have a good potential. We need to put all the pieces together, but honestly, we will discover it only when we will be in Melbourne. If you remember last year, McLaren was completely off the pace in the first 4 sessions. They went to Melbourne, they were 1 second quicker than us. They were in the top row, so time will tell.
Alonso found himself 5th fastest on the day, but he did complete 75 laps. But the worst day belonged to Lotus. Having impressed in Jerez in the quickest 2012 car, a chassis fault was discovered after Romain Grosjean had completed just 7 laps.
No, it's better that we have some issue now than in the first race in Melbourne. So, in a way, I'm happy that it happens now and not later in the season.
The fault was so serious that it was decided their week in Barcelona was over, and the chassis was returning to England for further investigation. In contrast, Force India had a much better day. Having lost a whole day in Jerez due to a crash early on, they set the second quickest lap through Nico Hülkenberg, who then went on to complete 97 laps in total.
You have to be realistic, and it's the second test, and that means basically nothing. I think important is now to get me comfortable in the car, go through our program, get to know the car, and get as good prepared as we can for the first couple of races, and that's the focus, that's the target for us here, and that we did the second fastest time is not of interest for us. I think we have a good baseline, where we could do some good work with, but obviously there's still room for improvement, room for development. I haven't seen any lap times or analysed data to the competitors. Right now my focus is just on improving myself, improving the car, and focusing on maximise our own performance.
I've looked at all the opposition, and it's all quite good, actually. It's very worrying. I think that all teams are going to be good this year. I mean, I think the battle for 5th place is going to be as exciting as the one for the championship. So there's nothing to choose between them. It's going to be who can deliver in the first flyaway races, and then about rate of development through the season.
Setting the pace on day one, though, was the Red Bull. The electrical fault, which saw them spend most of the final day in Jerez in the garage, seemed to have been resolved, and Vettel set the fastest lap.
I think we're content, but you always want more. You always want more laps. You always, never have enough time in the day, and especially with the testing being so condensed. This year it was a cold start this morning, so that plays a little bit havoc with these cars. They don't like running in, very cold conditions.
Lewis Hamilton was driving the McLaren on day one and was 0.3 of a second slower than the Red Bull, but there were plenty of positives.
It's a huge step compared to last year. I think just today I did more laps than I probably did in the whole of the last winter. So it's a big step for us. We did 114 laps. I mean, that's massive for reliability, and we learned a lot about the tyres and the long run and different fuel loads. So we're in a good position. I think there's still a lot of work to do, but quite happy.
It wasn't such a good day for the Caterham of Heikki Kovalainen, which broke down after just 9 laps with a rear track rod failure. It was fixed in the garage, but only 40 minutes before the end of the day. A similar fate befell Daniel Ricciardo, who'd had a good day until the Toro Rosso broke down an hour before the end. On day 2, it was the Force India that went quickest, Nico Hülkenberg recording the fastest lap so far, closely followed by Sergio Perez in the Sauber. Sebastian Vettel found another 0.4 of a second in the Red Bull, while Lewis Hamilton was slower than on day 1. The teams continued to carry out race simulations on day 3, but some were held back by technical problems. Paul di Resta was unable to pick up where Hülkenberg had left off.
We had a bit of a KERS issue, then a bodywork issue, so we lost the whole morning. We decided the programme was best to get through the longer runs in the afternoon. We achieved everything we wanted to do and actually done 84 laps based around 3 hours work.
Mark Webber was 6th fastest and admitted to still suffering a loss of grip at the rear, but was clear about who'd impressed in Barcelona.
I think McLaren are in pretty good nick at the moment. Obviously Mercedes are looking to win a lot this year as well, so as you know, Ferrari, we don't know if they're the full potential yet, but Melbourne is always where it comes. I mean, we can stand here and talk as long as we want, but for sure we'll be having another chat after the race in Melbourne.
Felipe Massa matched Webber for lap times, but was looking for more from the F2012 on the final day, and he got it, completing over 100 laps in a day for the first time. Caterham struggled though. After a good week in Jerez, they weren't so lucky in Barcelona.
It's truly been a testing few days, I can say, here in Barcelona. We had a good test in Jerez last week, very few problems on the car. Came here, ran Vitali for the first time, and we've had a catalogue of problems, to be honest. We failed to make him comfortable in the car as he would like. We can't give him the car that he would like setup-wise, and so he's had to drive the last couple of days really compromised in many ways.
But on day 4, it was the Sauber once again that topped the timings, with Kamui Kobayashi completing the most laps, 144, and with the quickest time. Red Bull were back on the track after a breakdown late on Thursday. Mark Webber and Jenson Button both ran on hard tyres, with the McLaren running marginally quicker.
I don't sense there's any, sadly we're not the dominant team, I don't sense there's any dominant team, so that's the bad news for me, but the good news is I don't think anyone else looks dominant either. Red Bull looks strong, Ferrari, Mercedes, I think we look pretty reasonable, so that's encouraging, but as you know, Formula 1 cars, depending on the programme, depending on fuel load, depending on what you're doing, can really have a big influence. I suspect the big boys at this end could probably go 2 or 3 seconds a lap quicker if they really tried, but that's not the name of the game. We're not trying to win the Winter World Championship. We're trying to gather data, be prepared so that we can be strong for the season.
McLaren are still running their launch spec, with the upgrades not being fitted until the final test. And Red Bull are also expected to make changes to the RB8 before the cars take to the track in Barcelona once more.
So, the second round of testing is now over, but none of these trucks are going to be going anywhere because all of the teams will be back here in Barcelona from the 1st of March for their last track time before the first Grand Prix in Melbourne. What a week it has been, though, to look back on. We've had the launch of the new Mercedes, we've had breakdowns, we've also had one team pulling out in the case of Lotus. And to look back on the week, we're going to speak to one of the big personalities in Formula 1 right now. He's the Chief Technical Officer of the Caterham Group. He's Mike Gascoigne, and we're going to meet him in here in their hugely impressive motorhome. This really is privileged access for us. Not many folk get in here, and what marvellous facilities they are. It looks like the restaurant or bar area of a high-class hotel. Something like this certainly makes 9 months on the road, travelling around the world, much more comfortable and bearable. Mike, thank you very much for having us in here. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Welcome.
But lovely surroundings here, but it's been quite a fraught day for you and Caterham today. Where did it all start going wrong?
Well, actually, first proper run we did this morning on new tyres. Heike said he had a misfire. We went to change some things on the engine. Unfortunately, having had a look at that, they decided they wanted to change the whole engine. And with KERS on the car this year and everything, that's quite a long change. It'll be quicker when we're at the racetrack, but here in pre-season testing, we don't tend to have all the spares, all the parts we need, so we've got to swap some things from one engine to another, so it just took a bit longer than expected.
And it's not just the smaller teams, with all due respect to yourselves and some of the others who've had problems. In fact, I suppose the team who have had the most problems here this week and who are no longer here is Lotus. How much of a blow would that whole scenario have been to them? They say they can fix the chassis, but it's got to be a major setback this close to Melbourne.
It's pretty strange to get something that serious that affects, I believe it was a crack in the chassis affecting the suspension mount. That's pretty unusual and not that straightforward to fix. And obviously they've missed the whole of this test. Well, we've only got 3 pre-season tests, so that's a third of them gone. And it means that a lot of those problems that we had here this week, little things that go wrong, stop the car running and you fix in time for Melbourne, won't be fixed. So they'll be doing their best to catch up, but you know, I think anyone would have to admit it's a big setback.
The major unveiling this week was the new Mercedes car, which they kept us waiting for. In the end, there didn't seem too much superficially on the car, different from most of the others. What sort of force could they be? I mean, can Rosberg and Schumacher break into that top 3? Maybe initially in the season at least?
I think they will, to be honest. I think they'll be pretty happy with the test. They've done a lot of laps. I don't think they've tried particularly hard to do one-off laps. Their long runs look pretty quick. I think they'll be very happy, and I would expect them to be nibbling, maybe even beating Ferrari and close to the top 2. So I think they'll be pretty happy after this first test.
Martin Whitmarsh was telling me today that he thought it was a Red Bull that had the better straight line speed, and funnily enough the McLaren was looking rather better round corners, which is kind of opposite way to the way it was last year.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we'll see. I mean, you've got to be careful who's running DRS, not running DRS, when you're running KERS, not running KERS, doing race simulations. It's very, very difficult to be precise, but I'd be very surprised if Red Bull weren't the team to beat in Melbourne.
Lewis Hamilton's tweeting that he's out on the town with Nicole again, so he seems in a happier demeanour. I mean, have you read that into his behaviour? Have you seen much of him?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall he has a pretty good life. He ought to be pretty happy, I know. But yeah, I can't see why he should be that unhappy in life. But he wants to be winning. You know, he's a guy that's very focused on winning motor races, and so he'll want a car that can give him that.
Yeah, and Jenson Button, who outscored him last year, again, he's come with a very positive demeanour, it seems to me. Likes the car, likes the setup of the car as well. And do you sense with these new Pirelli tyres that maybe they suit some drivers more than others, and he's one of them that they do suit?
Definitely. I mean, Jenson's always been super smooth with his driving style. And with these tyres where you've got high degradation, if you lean on them too hard early on, they'll go off and they'll degrade a lot quicker. And Jenson has always been very, very easy on the car and the tyres, whereas Lewis tends to be more aggressive. So for sure, we've seen a lot of tyre degradation here at Barcelona. Very low grip, very high tyre degradation. So if that's a factor, that's always going to play into Jenson's hand. And I think that was one of the real critical things last year, when he got the upper hand on his teammate, which was a fantastic achievement.
Tell us, what are your hopes? What are your expectations at this point?
I think there's going to be a group of 3 or 4 teams, that second half of the midfield group, all within half a second of each other, and I think we'll be in that group.
Okay, well, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, and enjoy your lovely hospitality. You've made us feel very welcome this week. Has been a fascinating week, but of course we're going to learn an awful lot more when we're back here in Barcelona on March the 1st for the final round of testing before everything kicks off in Melbourne with the first race of the season.